Far out in the remote South Pacific Ocean, more than 2,000 miles from the nearest continental shore, lies one of the world's most mysterious and haunting archaeological sites, a small, wind-battered volcanic island known as Rapa Nui, or Easter Island, a name bestowed by Dutch explorers who arrived on Easter Sunday in 1722, but behind its serene surface and lush past lies a story steeped in wonder, tragedy, brilliance, and a chilling warning for the future of civilization. For this island, more than 63 square miles in size, is home to nearly 1,000 towering stone statues called Moai, some weighing over 80 tons and standing more than 30 feet tall, silent sentinels with elongated faces, broad noses, and deep-set eyes that seem to gaze across the landscape with sorrowful resignation. And for centuries, people have asked the same bewildered question: who built these statues, why, and how did a seemingly primitive society on a tiny, isolated speck of land accomplish such a monumental feat? And as more evidence has emerged, the truth, layered in archaeological revelations and cultural folklore, has turned out to be more fascinating and terrifying than most could have ever imagined. Beginning with the island's initial settlement around 1200 CE by Polynesian seafarers, likely from the Marquesas or Society Islands, who braved thousands of miles of open ocean in double-hulled canoes guided by the stars, birds, and ocean currents, and upon arrival, they found an untouched paradise rich with forests, birds, fertile soil, and freshwater sources, an Eden for a people with a deeply spiritual connection to the land and sea. And here they began a new society rooted in ancestor worship, tribal competition, and intricate oral tradition. And as generations passed, these settlers developed a highly stratified social structure with powerful chiefs, specialized craftsmen, and a religious elite who believed that the spirits of important ancestors could influence the fate of the living. And thus the Moai were born, not merely statues, but sacred vessels of mana, the spiritual force that linked the living to the dead, carved from the soft volcanic tuff of the Reno Raraco quarry and transported miles to various ceremonial platforms called ahus scattered around the island's perimeter, always facing inland to watch over their descendants. And while the methods used to move the statues remain debated, recent studies suggest they may have been walked upright using a sophisticated system of ropes, coordination, and physics, a method passed down through oral tradition, supported by experiments showing how a few dozen people could sway and pivot the statues forward over great distances. But what is even more astonishing is that the creation and transportation of the Moai occurred without metal tools, wheels, or draft animals, demonstrating a level of ingenuity, communal effort, and spiritual dedication rarely matched in human history. Yet as awe-inspiring as this story is, it is also steeped in darkness, for as the Rapa Nui people poured more of their time, energy, and identity into carving ever larger Moai in an escalating race between rival clans, the island's resources began to dwindle. The lush palm forests were cut down for timber, transport sleds, and agriculture, native birds were hunted to extinction, and the once rich soil was eroded by overuse, until by the 17th century, the island was nearly barren, its population ravaged by famine, deforestation, and internecine warfare, leading to the toppling of many Moai and acts of rebellion or despair. And the terrifying truth that has emerged is that the very achievements which defined their civilization also contributed to its downfall. A sobering parable of ecological collapse fueled by religious fervor, social pressure, and overexploitation. And as European explorers arrived and brought new diseases, slavery, and cultural disruption, the already fragile society crumbled further, reducing a population once estimated at several thousand to just over 100 survivors by the late 19th century. And in their devastation, many of the island's stories, names, and secrets were lost, leaving behind only stone giants and fragments of oral history. But among these remnants is the haunting legend of the Tangata Manu, or Birdman cult, which arose after the Moai era as a new form of leadership where warriors competed in a deadly annual contest to retrieve the first egg of the sooty tern from a nearby islet, scaling cliffs, swimming through shark-infested waters, and risking their lives to become the spiritual leader of the island for a year, a shift from ancestor worship to survival-driven ritual reflecting a society in collapse. Yet even this adaptation could not stave off the forces of colonialism and cultural erosion, as missionaries and foreign powers arrived, imposing Christianity, displacing traditions, and ultimately annexing the island under Chilean control. But the Moai remained stoic, broken, partially buried, and overgrown as silent witnesses to a vanished world. And modern archaeology has slowly begun to recover their story, using carbon dating, satellite imaging, DNA analysis, and soil samples to piece together how a thriving, innovative culture rose and fell in isolation, revealing that the people of Rapa Nui were not foolish or doomed by ignorance but were instead resourceful and adaptive, faced with impossible environmental limits and social tensions. And what makes their Story truly terrifying is not some alien theory or supernatural force, it is the fact that their collapse mirrors patterns we see today on a global scale. Deforestation, overconsumption, loss of biodiversity, and the struggle between progress and sustainability, making Easter Island not a mystery from the past but a mirror reflecting our own precarious future. And while many have speculated wildly, from ancient aliens to lost civilizations, the truth is far more human and therefore far more chilling. For the legacy of the Moai is not just in their size or number but in what they tell us about ourselves, our drive to create, to compete, to revere, and to consume. And the haunting faces of these statues are not looking at the sea in search of gods or saviors, they are looking inward, toward the island, toward the people who built them, and toward us, their descendants in spirit, standing now on the brink of our own resource crises. Looking for meaning in the stones of those who came before, and today, efforts are being made to preserve and restore what remains of Rapa Nui's heritage, with UNESCO declaring it a World Heritage Site, and local communities and archaeologists working together to balance tourism, conservation, and cultural revival. But the scars remain, etched in the barren hillsides, the toppled Moai, and the bones of a society that once dreamed of eternity, carving monuments to their ancestors until the very land could no longer sustain them. And so the next time you see an image of a Moai half-buried, gazing skyward, isolated against the blue horizon, remember that you were not just looking at a statue, you were looking at a story of brilliance and blindness, unity and collapse, and the enduring question of whether we, too, might one day leave behind a world of silent monuments, wondering what we were trying to say before the silence took hold.